Chapter 5. A closer look at the balance sheet. How do organizations raise and deploy funds? Question mark. How you have seen that the two sides of a balance sheet always balance. But why does this happen? Why can't the total of one side be more or less than the total of the other? The technical answer, of course, is that balance sheet balance because they are prepared using the double entry system of bookkeeping, in which each transaction is recorded twice, on the debit side and then again on the credit side. Eventually, the net debit appear on the asset side and the net credit on the liability side. This is why the balance sheet must always balance, but this kind of answer does not appeal to the common sense. Let's try to understand from a logical point of view why balance sheet balance. Consider the balance sheet shown here. As we know, the two sides of a balance sheet reveal assets and liabilities. Now let's understand what are liabilities. Liabilities represent money that the organization owns. This is money that it owns because it was borrowed by the organization. In other words, liability shows sources of money where the organization has received its fund from. Now, what are assets? Now let's understand. Assets represent something that the organization possesses, something that it owns, and which has been obtained by spending the money raised. In other words, assets tell us where the money was spent, the uses of money. Looking at in this way, the liability side represent sources and the asset side represent uses. This means that if we borrow a sum of 100 and then spend this money and purchase various assets worth 100, naturally the balance sheet will balance. What if the organization borrows 100 and does not spend all the money? Let's say it purchases asset worth only 90. Now, how will the balance sheet balance? In this case, the organization still has 10 as cash in the bank, and bank balance also appears as one of the item under current asset. If an organization borrows 100 and spend 100, the balance sheet will balance. If it spends less than 100, it will still balance. Is it possible for the organization to borrow 100 and spend more than 100, say 110? It is possible. In this case, the difference of 10 will appear under current liabilities as payables or creditors. There is no situation in which a balance sheet won't balance whether one spends what one has or less or more. The sources of and uses of fund. Let's first examine the sources. How do organizations raise fund? There is only one way. When an organization needs money, it borrows. It borrows from owners and from outsiders. Borrowing from owners might sound contradictory. However, as you know, the organization and its owners are considered as separate entities in accounting. When an organization needs money, it has to borrow. When it borrows from the owners, it is called capital. When money is borrowed from outsiders, it is called a loan. Since both are in the nature of borrowing, both appear on a liability side of the balance sheet. The organization must never forget that it owns as much as obligation to the owners as to outsider lenders. When the organization is clearly aware that owner's money is also a loan, it is then more likely to treat it with the kind of diligence and respect that it usually accord to borrowed money. However, the distinctions lies in the term of lending. Outsider, for example banks, lend money on the condition that they must be paid a fixed return on their investment, like a interest, irrespective of whether the organization makes a profit or not. They also expect that the loan amount be repaid over a pre-agreed time frame. Owners impose no such condition. They neither expect a fixed return nor do they usually expect to be repaid the organization the principal amount of their contribution in the lifetime of the organization. If the organization earns nothing, they get nothing. Two components for this risk that owners take when organizations do make profit. The entire profit that remain after rewarding all the other constituents belong to the owners. Outside lenders who do not take higher risks get reasonable but guaranteed return. The owners who bear all the risks of getting no reward in bad years, as well as the risks of losing their entire capital if things go wrong, get no guarantees but also have no limits imposed on the return that can be given to them. Let's look at the situation a little more closely using an example to give us context. Imagine that a new business has been set up. It needs a total capital investment of 1000, of which 400 is the owner's contribution and 600 is taken on loan from a bank carrying a rate of interest of 10% per annum. Both these items appear on the liability side as shown. The money raised will be used to acquire various assets. Let us assume that the asset, when put to use, help generate a total sales turnover of 3000. There will have be several claimants asking for a share of this 3000. How many groups of such claimants can you visualize? One group will comprise the employees of vendors, the landlord, the utility suppliers, the printer, the stationer, the travel agent, and so on. This group represent operation expenses. Another group is made up of shareholders or owners who are also expecting a reward. Yet another group is a government which expect to collect taxes, and lenders also need to be rewarded. The revenue generated by any organization will get shared among these four listed groups, but not in order in which we have listed them. Let's now decide the order of payment. The first claim on the turnover of 3000 will be that of operating expenses. These get topmost priority. Come the first of the month, salaries and rent must be paid on the due date. Vendors too have to pay. If we won't do this, we will be out of business very soon. Let's assume the operating expenses work out to 1600. That leaves us with 1400. This amount is the operating profit. This is the stage of a profit at which we have recovered our operating expenses but have yet to pay taxes to the government, interest to the lenders, and dividends to the shareholders. This figure is also called PBIT, profit before interest and tax, or EBIT, earning before interest and tax. Whose turnover is it to be rewarded now? We must now pay the lenders. As per the partial balance sheet shown earlier, there is a loan of 600 borrowed at the rate of 10%. This means we owe 60 as interest. PBIT of 1400 less interest of 60 leaves us with 1340. This amount is the PBT, profit before tax. It is the amount on which we will pay tax. Let's say the taxes amount to 340. The resultant figure of 1000 is now called PAT, or profit after tax. PAT, as we have seen, belong to the answer. So now next in the queue are the owners waiting for the 1000 to distributed among them. The owners had agreed that if the organization earns nothing, they get nothing, but when the organization does make profit, they expect the entire profit that remains after everybody else has been paid to be distributed among them. However, this will most likely not happen. Why do you think that the PAT of 1000 which has been implicitly promised to the owners will not be distributed among them? No organization distributes the entire profit amongst its shareholders. Why does it happen To this question, the usual answer I receive are it still has to return the loan, it needs money for expansion. I accept all the answers as reason number 2 for not distributing the entire profit among shareholders, but there is more important reason number 1. You might recall that in the earlier part of this book I often laid stress on the fact that profit do not represent money. It is likely that an organization with huge profit may have no money. It is just as likely that an organization which has plenty of money may not be making profit. Now, for an organization to distribute the part of 1000 amongst the shareholders, it is essential that it should first have a bank balance of 1000, which is virtually impossible. A profit of say 1000 million, that is 1 billion, accompanied by a bank balance of 1000 million would be impossible, but a profit of 1000 million accompanied by a negative bank balance of 300 million is certainly possible. In order for an organization to pay dividend, it is not sufficient that profit has been made, it must have the requisite amount of liquid cash too. Therefore, even though theoretically the owners have a right to take home the entire part of 1000, practical consideration will ensure that the dividend actually distributed is a much smaller figure. Even if the organization had the money, in all the likelihood the entire profit would still not be distributed among the owners. It would get reinvented or reinvested in the business to take advantages of growth opportunities and for future expansion. Let's say the organization decide to pay dividend at the rate of 50% of the capital invested, having taken into amount the cash that can be mustered and distributed without disrupting the work capital requirement, the impact on the price of the share in the stock market and other relevant factors. The capital invested by the owners is 400, dividend thus will work out to 200. Out of a pat of 1000, if dividends of 200 per are paid, that leaves us with a balance of 800. Now, who does this 800 belong to? Contrary to the common misconception that it belongs to the organization, this 800 continues to belong to the owners. By accepting 200 out of the pat of 1000, the owners have not waived their right over the remaining 800. If the organization does not pay this amount to the shareholder, it continue to owe it to them. Till yesterday, the organization owe the owners 400, the capital they had originally invested. Today it owes the owners 1200, the original 400 as well as an additional 800 that the organization has earned but has not yet paid. This retained profit will now appear on the liability side of the balance sheet under the heading Reserves and Surplus. The direct contribution made by the owners, share capital, as well as their indirect contribution retained by the organization in the form of undistributed profit reserve, together represent the shareholders' net worth, also represent a difference between the book value of assets less external liabilities. A while ago, we saw that liabilities represent sources, and till now we have seen three principal sources of funds. The first, capital, is a direct contribution received from the owners, the shareholders. The second, reserve, is an indirect contribution again by the owners. They may not have physically invested this money, but they have left behind what they could have legitimately withdrawn, making it efficiently an additional source. We could also say that the entire profit after tax of 1000 was actually given to the owners, and they decided to return 800 to the organization as their additional contribution. The third item is loan. This contribution comes from outsiders. There is yet another, a fourth important source of a fund. Sometime instead of borrowing money, organization borrow goods. When goods are purchased from vendors on credit, it amounts to a loan. not in cash but in kind. This appears on the liability side as creditors. This is how the source side of a balance sheet will now look. Should you have less money or more? One important question we must consider here is, why is this organization going around collecting funds from all the sundry? It collects money from the owners and also from outsiders. It collects from owners directly as well as indirectly. From outsider it takes loan in cash and also in kind. Is this an arbitrary collection of money, or must it be as per a plan? The answer is that if this organization wishes to be successful, its collections of fund had better be as per a plan. What will happen if there has been an unplanned garnering of resources? If the resources have been raised without a definite plan in mind, when this organization start investing, it will discover that it either has less money than it requires or more. That is, either it will run short or money midway in the process or acquiring assets, or it would have purchased all the assets it need and still have money left over, which do not think is a happier situation. Should you have less money or more? It is quite obvious that if an organization has less than the required fund available, it will suffer from the consequences of shortage. It is sure to get into trouble. However, if an organization has more money than it needs, it is going to get into even bigger trouble. Now, everybody understands the problems that can arise if one is shorter of funds. What is less easy to understand is how one can get into trouble if one has more. This I will explain in the next chapter. But you must always remember the mantra for success in business, and that is, less is bad, more is worse. Should you maintain higher inventory or lower? Should you have a larger amount in the form of receivable and debtors or a smaller? Should you have more of a bank balance or less? There's a simple answer to this question, and it is neither. All this should be at an optimum level. Remember, less is bad, more is worse. Let's now look at the use side of a balance sheet. Where will typical organization spend the funds it collects? A substantial portion of the funds collection will be invested in the certain of infrastructure. Every organization need invest in various kind of asset required to run its business. A manufacturing company will need to invest in land, building and equipment. A trader need to invest in showrooms, warehouse and offices. A software company will invest in equipment, license and furniture. Such investment appear in a balance sheet under the head fixed asset. Even if a substantial portion of a total resources goes into infrastructure, business must ensure that all the funds do not get exhausted in the certain of infrastructure alone. There should be money left after purchasing fixed assets, since the infrastructure to use a business need to continuous supply of working capital. What are the components of working capital? Let's take the case of a manufacturing organization. It invests a large amount in purchasing excellent infrastructure but exhausts all its resources in the process. It now receives a large order. Do you think the organization will be able to execute the order? Probably not. A few rare and extremely fortunate organizations are able to command the entire invoice value or even a portion of it as advance payment for the consumer. In most cases, this will not happen. They now need to buy the raw material for in order. In fact, prudent businesses do not procure raw material after the order is received, but will buy and keep an inventory of raw materials so that production can commence immediately on receipt of an order. The first and the foremost requirement of working capital, therefore, is in order to acquire and maintain inventories. A large order that the manufacturing organization receives needs about 3 months' time to be executed. However, the first of the month is round the corner. The employees are expecting salaries and landlords is expecting rent, and all the other overheads also have to be paid. Employees and others cannot be told that they will be paid only after the money is received from customer. After delivering of goods ordered, organization must understand that incomes are sporadic while expenses are continuous. This means that the organization must certain sufficient cash in hand to meet its day-to-day expenses without waiting for inflows from operations. Thus, adequate cash and bank balance is yet another component of working capital. Finally, after 3 months of hard work, the organization completes the order, the client approves the consignment and requests that delivery be made. But the term of sale where that payment would be made 60 days after delivery. Having invested a substantial amount in order, the organization must possess the ability to sustain itself financially for another 2 months, during which time the routine work and all expenses related to it will continue. Debtors are now become the third component of working capital. When an organization sells goods at credit to produce which substantial amount have been invested, it is in effect acting like a banker to the customer to whom instead of money it has lent goods. To sum up, in a balance sheet, liabilities represent resources and assets represent uses of funds. There are two principal sources of funds, owners and outsiders. Each investors in two ways. Owner make a direct contribution when they invest their money and an indirect contribution when they leave behind the profit which they were entitled to take home. Outsider invest by either lending money loan or by lending goods suppliers credit. The resources so raised are deployed in two ways: towards certain of infrastructure, purchase of fixed asset, and towards working capital. Working capital has three components, namely inventory, cash and bank balance, and debtors or receivers. With this, you are now ready to move on the next chapter and receive one of the most important lessons that I am going to give you in this book, and that is how to practice good financial management at all time. Quote, the surest way to ruin a man who does not know how to handle money is to give him some. Thank you.